Welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar today from Microsourcing. My name's Nathan Stewart. I'm here to present a webinar all about the outsource equation and all about cutting costs by around 70%. And obviously in a market like what we're in at the moment, this is an important topic for all businesses, large and small. And we're very excited to bring you some information that will hopefully help you in the months and years to come. So welcome along for all the people that are joining us live. Welcome. And also for those of you that perhaps have chosen to watch the recording afterwards, thanks for coming along. We hope it adds some value. We've got about 30 minutes together and we're going to go through a series of content, and then I'll take some questions at the end for those of you that have got some questions that you want to ask. So just by way of background, maybe if I just give you an initial background on myself, so you understand some of the context of my experience with offshoring. Originally, I was actually a CEO of a digital marketing agency based in Melbourne for 20 years. So my background's in digital marketing. And during that period, I actually, hired over 100 offshore staff. It was a normal part of our business, even when the business was acquired by a professional services company in Melbourne. We had 20 team members that were actually offshore at the time in the Philippines. So for many years, the Philippines has been a key part of my business experience. I later became a client of Microsourcing's before I actually joined the team. So I actually set up a team of accountants and bookkeepers in the Mall of Asia office at Microsourcing. And while I was a client, I did travel to the Philippines, met up with my team at the start of the engagement, and also at around about 9-10 months in, I actually went back again as the team grew, and we ended up having 9 accountants and bookkeepers with Microsourcing. So from my perspective, I've actually seen offshoring with Microsourcing from both sides of the fence. And today we're going to sort of share with you some of that experience that I've had over the years. I do live in Melbourne, Australia, while Microsourcing does service clients right around the globe, and I get the pleasure of talking to them. 1 minute we're talking to the US, Australia, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, but I am based in Melbourne, Australia, with my family. You see a picture of Candace, my partner, who is actually Filipino. Obviously I am well embedded into the Philippines, and my son, I live with my youngest son, Levi, based in Melbourne. So yeah, Philippines has been a key part of me. I love the culture, I love the people, and I've really enjoyed setting up teams, and I think you will too. Sorry, just 2 seconds. So Microsourcing, let me tell you a little bit about Microsourcing. Now, I don't want to delve too much into us. It's not about me sort of selling to you today. It's about me sharing with you some great knowledge. But just to set the context for who Microsourcing is, it is absolutely a pioneer in offshoring. It was founded back in 2006, so it's been around now for quite some time. We've grown now to have just over 8,000 staff working from 12 delivery centers around the Philippines. Most of those are based in Manila and Cebu. So they're the 2 main business districts in the Philippines, and certainly where the majority of the high talent lies in the Philippines. So that's obviously why we're based there. We support just over 600 clients worldwide. And while we have a very strong base in Australia, and I know many of you here attending today will be based in Australia, we do serve clients right around the globe. And one of the beauties of the Philippines is that you can set up teams to service the entire 24/7 time zone. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. What is Microsourcing? It's a full-time dedicated staffing model. So we run a managed services solution that is a full-time dedicated staffing in the Philippines. So we only specialize in the Philippines, and we only specialize in full-time dedicated staffing. We find that works best for our clients, and obviously it's one of the things that has helped us grow as our clients have scaled with us. We really see our clients as partners in the industry. We run a bespoke recruitment process, and you get to handpick your talent. So with Microsourcing, it all starts with you determining the job description that you need filled, and us going to the market with that job description, running a bespoke recruitment process. So we're not just allocating you staff that are sort of currently sitting on a bench, if you like. Microsourcing, will basically run a bespoke recruitment process, specifically giving you access to the talent that is unique to your needs. And ultimately, you handpick the talent that you want to employ, so you control that process. We're fully certified for both ISO, information security, and also quality management. And so certainly some of our larger clients really value that. Right, so let me just take you through one of the critical things that is often discussed in the Philippines is this difference between offshoring and outsourcing. And a lot of terms are, bandied around the industry. And I think it's really important for you to understand the difference. So microsourcing does offshoring. And let me explain what offshoring is. So offshoring involves hiring dedicated full-time staff in the Philippines. It's a lot like hiring a staff member locally, in that you retain all the operational control of those staff. They're the equivalent of you having a staff member working locally as part of your team full-time. Maybe they're working from home. Well, obviously the Philippines, it could be an alternative to that. So really it's all about offshoring. It's the equivalent of hiring staff locally, albeit they're obviously going to be in the Philippines, and they're going to come to you at a huge cost savings. And that's what we're here to talk about today, how you can reduce your costs. In the Philippines, that cost savings is typically around about 60 to 70% off what you would expect to pay locally. So it's a huge cost savings. It is the main driver that drives people to the Philippines, obviously, to build an offshore team, but it's not the only benefit. And I think one of the experiences that I've had over the years is that you've realized that having Filipinos on your team really adds tremendous value well beyond the cost savings. We are going to talk primarily about cost savings today, but there is many other benefits of having them, and just their culture and their demeanor, their approach to work and their work ethic is incredible. And I think most companies that you speak to that have Filipinos on their team will really tell you it's been a great experience. So yeah, with offshoring, you have that operational control, full-time dedicated staff. It's a lot like hiring staff locally. Outsourcing is when you have a specific task or project that you need delegated. So it's really where you're handing over that operational control to someone else. And you may be doing that deliberately. Maybe you don't have the expertise in-house, or maybe it's just a short-term task or project that you want to run, maybe for a week, a couple of months, and you just need something done, and you just want someone else to do it for you and deliver the end outcome. That's where outsourcing works really well. And certainly outsourcing, or commonly what we call shared services in the Philippines, is very common. I mean, the Philippines can offer these sorts of services as well, but you've got to choose the right model at the right time. And if you are looking to scale your existing operation, if you want your team to be extended into the Philippines, then offshoring is the way to go. So just be aware that there are two different terminologies often used in the industry, and they can be used for the same thing. So let's look at the business landscape. We are in a time of incredible inflation, and in my lifetime, I'm 48 years old now. In my lifetime, we've never seen so much inflation, where prices are just going up left, right, and center, and it's having a profound impact on consumers. It's having a profound impact on businesses. And I honestly, I probably don't even need to discuss this with you, because obviously it's obvious. But let's go through it. So for starters, you're going to have increased operating costs. You're going to have reduced purchasing power in your business. You're going to have people are having cost of living pressures, and as a result, their wage expectations are often growing. And with that, in countries like Australia, we have superannuation, which is growing. We have your payroll taxes relative to the amount of wages you pay, so that's going to grow. So as wages increase, ultimately, your costs of running your business are going to increase. We've got interest rate uncertainty, which is obviously putting pressure under businesses and consumers alike. And we have skill shortages. It's honestly hard to get staff in many industries. And So, you know, how can offshoring and outsourcing play a part in all of that? So first of all, you're going to get access to cost-effective labor, typically around about 60 to 70% less than what you would expect to pay locally. So as a rough guide, and it does vary depending on experience levels that you're looking to hire in the Philippines. It does vary based on different job roles that you're looking to hire. But, you know, and I should mention that microsourcing can actually recruit for over 400 different job roles. So there are a lot of different job roles that you can recruit to the Philippines. But yeah, coming back to the cost savings, you know, typically as a rough guide, if you take the local salary and minus 60 to 70% off that, that's typically what you're going to pay for the same role in the Philippines. It obviously is a key way of reducing your operating costs by hiring staff offshore. Now, if you look at labor costs specifically, it typically makes up around about 40 to 50% of your total costs in your business. It is one of the largest things that you can optimize to have the most profound impact on profitability. And, you know, in times when profit margins are being compressed, people are working harder for the same amount of money. An obvious thing to do would be to look at optimizing your labor costs. You're going to get access to a global talent pool. And coming back to that skill shortages, I'm going to take you through an example, but I mentioned before that I worked, you know, in a role where I was setting up a team of accountants and bookkeepers in the Philippines. And one of the classic things that's happening in Australia at the moment is there's a huge shortage of accountants. So the number of graduates in accounting, you know, in university degrees has halved in the last 3 years in Australia. And the graduates that are finishing their courses at university are often going back to the countries that they came to. They're, you know, due to visa issues and so forth, then they're not staying in Australia. So that labor pool's just not easily available. And at the other end of the, you know, experience spectrum in accountants, you know, accountants are retiring. So as you know, there's a lot of older accountants that are at the time of retirement and well deserved. So that industry is a perfect example. And it's not the only one where there's a real skills shortage. And you know, you can look to markets like the Philippines where they have a very young talent pool. It's obviously a larger population. I mean, just to be clear, the Philippines has around about 117 million people in it. If I compare that to Australia, it's about 26 million. And the Philippines has a very young population. The average age of a Filipino is 25 years old. Whereas the average age of, let's say, an Australian is 39. So we've got a sort of aging population. They've got this very large pool of young, vibrant talent that's well educated, you know, and shares so many cultural affinities with countries like Australia and the US. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at the Philippines. You know, why is it that it is growing as a destination, you know, to offshore staff to? First of all, language proficiency. One of the key things that I get asked all the time is, you know, how good is their English? And I should say that their English, while it is a second language, it is a key language of the Philippines. It is taught from a very, very young age in preschool, and you know, it's taught right through their schooling. And while, you know, microsourcing, when we're recruiting for staff, we still do, you know, English exams and things like that. But what you generally find is there's, you know, in many cases, they probably speak English better than I do without an accent. It tends to be a more neutral accent in the Philippines. And, you know, you don't have any problems communicating with them. And it's not even immediately an obvious accent. So, you know, they have grown up with Western culture. You know, if you look at their history, and there was, you know, times where they're heavily involved with the US, and certainly, you know, US films and movies and media and things like that are well entrenched into the Philippines. So yeah, definitely English is not an issue. You can always find strong English speaking candidates for your roles. Cultural affinity with the West, as I said, because of the historical ties and media consumption, Philippines are very familiar with Western culture. This cultural alignment really does benefit roles where, they might have a direct relationship with your customers. And so, while a lot of businesses will look at back of office roles, they can also look at customer facing roles. And in fact, that is one of our largest, in fact, it is our largest category of staff, which I'll cover in a minute. It's one of our largest service areas is that customer service roles and contact center roles. Skilled workforce, the number of graduates every year is very large. They are well versed in IT, finance, and other crucial roles, that the BPO industry covers. We're going to touch on that a little bit later on. It's obviously cost effective. 24/7 operations is a key to the Philippines. So, and that's one of the reasons that, our clients are based partly in Australia, but also in countries like the US. And it's because you can quite easily set up a team right across different time zones. So, for example, in Australia, we find businesses that might want to service not just the East Coast, but also perhaps Western Australia and Perth, which is actually perfectly aligned with the Philippines. But in the Philippines, just to let you know, anytime between 6 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night in the Philippines is standard business hours, 7 days a week. So, given it is only, where I live in Melbourne, it's a 2-hour difference in the time zone, which is not really much. It's 3 hours when we go into daylight savings, but either way, you could get staff perfectly aligned with your days if you're based in Australia. And even if you're based in countries like the US, the reality of it is it's quite normal for Filipino staff to work at night servicing companies in the US. And there's only a small night differential. To give you an idea, it's about 10%. A small night differential that, will be added to the staffing costs, but it's a marginal, increase, and you can still get access to those staff quite easily. And our offices and operations are open 24/7, 365 days a year. The industry's got a lot of government support. BPO industry is the key industry in the Philippines, so it gets a tremendous amount of government support. And the infrastructure they have in city areas like Manila, Cebu, which is where we have offices, Manila and Cebu, but also Davao, have tremendous infrastructure. I went over there recently, and the quality of their internet in Manila is actually better than what we have in Australia. The industry has grown massively, and it's consistently grown. The BPO industry is not new in the Philippines. It's been around now, for decades. You see the graph here right back to 2010 when it was sort of in its infancy, and it's just been this nice, consistent growth in terms of income for the country, but also headcount. The amount of people employed by the BPO industry is tremendous. It is a key industry in the Philippines and continues to grow, and for good reason. So the purpose of this webinar really is to help you understand outsourcing or offshoring, and how to overcome some of the cost pressures when it's done right. And there is a bit of an equation to this. Obviously, understanding the right goals, the right roles, and obviously having a right partner as well in the Philippines is typically the way to go. So let's go through some of the things. So in terms of goals, why do our clients offshore? What are the things that are driving? And obviously, there's several reasons. Cost cutting is a key factor of that, but it also could be that they're looking to connect better with customers. So maybe for those of you that have social media channels or maybe email channels, and you've got inquiries coming in from lots of different angles, they're coming in left, right, and center. And you might set up a ticketing system, and all of a sudden you want to support staff, not just during 9 till 5, but perhaps after hours when the internet, is being well used. You want to support staff after hours, or maybe you want to support them on weekends when you're hopefully having a little bit of a rest. You still need a customer service team to be able to do that. Or maybe you're opening up your business to other countries, and you want to be able to service staff at night when those countries like the US, for example, are open and operational. So connecting with customers is a key way of doing that. You can do that via the Philippines. And it's the underlying demeanor of a Filipino, the personality, hospitality is built into their culture. I have had so many amazing birthdays and celebrations and family events in the Philippines that, I just can't tell you how naturally it comes to a Filipino to be able to connect with people and be very hospitable. It is natural to who they are. It is why they are so good at service-based roles. That there's a lot of nurses, there's a lot of aged care Filipinos, but there's also a lot of other roles as well that you can take advantage of in terms of connecting with the customers. In terms of the growth, if you're trying to grow your business and you're looking to scale, and you want to do that without all the pressure, obviously when you're building a team out and scaling your business, first of all, you've got to find the talent. And obviously that could come with the recruitment costs that are quite extensive in Western worlds. Certainly in Australia, that would come with a hefty price tag. But then you've got to set them up in terms of infrastructure. So you might have to, potentially they're working in an office. There might be some rentals. You might have to buy them computers, set up their IT. So there's a lot of support services around the operations that you're going to need to scale with the team. And that can be cumbersome and take you away from your core business. So a lot of people come to the Philippines looking to scale their business and grow their revenues without some of those pains. They want to do it a lot easier. Obviously, the cost savings I've already mentioned. They want to free up resources locally. So if they're struggling to find talent locally, the last thing you want is your local team being bogged down with tasks that are arguably remedial or tasks that are repetitive and they could otherwise be better done by someone else. So and to access skill sets. So I'm going to come back to the accounting example just for a moment, and I don't want you to think that accounting is one of the only roles, but when I was looking to hire accountants offshore, one of the things that I was surprised about or bookkeepers in particular, a lot of businesses in Australia will have a bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper might be maybe a part-time mum that's sort of doing the bookkeeping in between, in between picking up the kids or something like that. But they're not necessarily fully qualified accountants doing your books. And when you go to the Philippines, you can hire a fully qualified accountant to do a bookkeeping role. So you basically can access a skill set that's far greater than what you could otherwise afford locally. And, often they do have, local skills, or certainly have worked for companies in an offshore capacity. Most of them have worked for BPOs before. So certainly accessing skills is definitely a way to go. And to improve efficiencies. So one obvious way to improve efficiencies is, so for example, if you're trying to service customer inquiries right across 24/7, you need to do it with more staff. You might have to resource up that. Obviously can create systems and processes, but one great way of doing it is to use some of that cost savings to be more effective at what you're doing. Right, so the outsourcing, in looking at some of the right roles. So what are the sort of roles that people look to offshore? And it's quite diverse. And I think that's one of the misunderstandings of the offshoring to the Philippines, is they don't realize how many different roles you can offshore to the Philippines. And it's certainly worth, talking to your partner about that, different business divisions within your company. There's a couple of key rules. One, if you've got any tasks that are repetitive or rule-based tasks, where you've got existing well-defined processes already, and you've been doing the same thing over and over and again in your business for many years, that would be an obvious thing to look at offshoring, because you'll probably get a more qualified person working within those systems, and potentially more people working within those systems. So anything that's repetitive or rule-based is definitely worth looking at. If you're looking to a role with scalability, so for example, if your customer service team is likely to scale, if you're just starting your business and you need one customer service person, but then maybe in coming years you might need 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. You can definitely get that scalability with ease out of the Philippines. And in terms of better quality of talent offshore, and I've touched on this, you can often afford to hire someone that is even beyond the skill set that you require, because you can afford to invest in that talent. Often what happens in Australia is people hire, juniors, graduates, things like that, and they train them up internally, progress them through a career. And of course, those graduates want to progress through a career, rightly so, in Australia, and they have to because of the cost of living. They have to, increase their salaries and so forth. But in the Philippines, you can go straight to the top. You can basically, if you choose, invest in a more senior level staff member, and it's easily accessible, and you can essentially be still getting them at a huge cost saving. So arguably you can get better quality of talent, not just quantity, but better quality of talent in the Philippines for many areas as well. So some of the common things that are offshored, accounts payable and receivable, obvious ones. Bookkeeping, I've already mentioned. Anything to do with customer service and inquiries. If you need a customer service team, that's an obvious one. Data entry, graphic design, a lot of digital marketing roles, although they are getting a little bit more competitive. They are certainly something you could consider offshoring. There is that sort of skill set out over there. And as I said, I've run a digital marketing agency and had almost all roles in the Philippines, social media managers, paid search managers, things like that in the Philippines as well. They are more specialized, they're more niche, but certainly available. Help desk support, level 1, level 2 help desk, that potentially gets escalated into a level 3, onshore team. So those sorts of things are definitely possible. Any payroll management, order processing, recruitment. If you need help in recruitment, obviously we're good at recruitment. We've done a lot of it. We have a team, a very large team of recruiters in our business. And you certainly can get that sort of skill set. The BPO industry would inevitably have helped that recruitment skills grow in the Philippines. So just looking at roles, the people often ask, what is the real cost of these roles, sort of on a rough basis. Now, these numbers, just to be clear, these numbers are actually monthly figures. I know in Australia we typically quote numbers based on annual salaries. In the Philippines, they typically quote numbers based on monthly figures. So think of these figures from a monthly point of view. You're typically, just as an overall ballpark, by the time you set up your staff, do all the recruitment, set them up with computers, working with a reliable partner like microsourcing, as a ballpark, you can see the figures range around about that sort of $2,000 mark, depending on the role and the level of experience, but around about that $2,000 mark per month. That's for full-time dedicated, so that's 160 hours a month. So you can see, that's you wouldn't have to do too many calculations to work out. It can be quite cost effective. If I look at microsourcing, I'm just sharing with you some of the breakdown of, I mentioned we've got about 8,500 staff, and just showing you the sort of categories of where those staff, what areas they're actually working in. So we've got about 1,800 in call center operations and customer service, and that's our biggest category, obviously making up about 26%. Engineering and industrial design, so CAD roles and draftsmen and those sorts of roles, 13% of our market, very huge part of our market. Technology, I've mentioned finance and accounting, and that's growing. The demand for that is tremendous. The creative design, web development, data processing. So there are, a lot of different roles that you can offshore to the Philippines. I work with, just so you know, I work with a great team of staff, and they have a tremendous amount of expertise. This is a lovely photo, a terrible photo of me, but a lovely photo of our team. So we've got, in fact, 3 guys now in the US, based in the US, 2 in California, and 1 on the East Coast that's just recently joined. Sean, who's the standout here, because he's our vice president, but also because he's the taller of the. I think I've got the height of these guys. Have actually got a background, in the Philippines. So, I think I've got the height of a Filipino, but Sean's definitely got the height there. A great team. Now, what can they offer you? They can basically give you so much expertise around how to structure your team, and it all starts with a job description. So, if you've got a job description, certainly help. Reach out to these guys, and they will be able to advise you accordingly on, getting some transparent costing around how it all works. Now, let's just go through very quickly. There's a step-by-step approach to selecting an outsourced provider. And, obviously, some of these, going to make a lot of sense. First of all, define your objectives. What is it? Is it short-term, or is it a long-term project? Is this part? Are you trying to, upscale your team that you've got locally, and wanting to do that cost effectively, or are you just trying to fulfill a short-term requirement? Be clearer about that. Where is the expertise? I mean, do you have systems and processes in your business already, or are you looking to acquire that expertise? So, and that'll affect how you structure your team. So, for example, when I had that team of accountants, again, I'll go back to that. My first hire, I deliberately hired someone a little bit more senior, and they were ultimately able to, upscale into, they were promoted into a team leader role. So consider that as well. You can potentially hire someone a bit more senior. They can help you become a team leader, and they'll help you onboard subsequent staff locally, which is fantastic if you can have, you running the recruitment process from Australia, but also have some of your local team members helping you as well. It works really well. Conduct research, have a look around. There is differences. There's a lot of providers in the market. A lot of people do that anyway. What people often don't realize is that there are different pricing models, and we talk about number 3 here, but different pricing models. One of the things that microsourcing try and do is have a very transparent pricing model. So what you agree to pay the staff is what they get paid. Often what happens in the Philippines is you'd get quoted an hourly rate or a monthly fee, and that would be a combination of the staff wages and benefits and the partner's fee, and you don't necessarily have visibility into how much the staff are being paid. With microsourcing, obviously, we try and make that completely transparent. What the staff get paid is, or what you agree to pay them is what they get paid. We just process the payroll and the benefits. Our fee is kept entirely separate, and I think that transparency, what it enables you to do. I mean, without that transparency, for example, what can happen is staff could potentially be poor quality right from the start, because they're being, only offered a smaller salary. They may be poor quality staff before you even begin. So obviously you want that transparency on how much they're being paid, and is it appropriate level of remuneration for their level of experience. And also transparent pricing reduces attrition. So, we have one of the lowest attrition rates in the BPO industry. I'm very proud of that. And it's not just because of the amount that staff are being paid. It's partly because of our staff engagement activities and, the substance behind our business and the way we manage performance reviews. And there's a variety of things behind the scenes that we do to help. But, I think having that transparent pricing and really knowing how much the staff are being paid is really critical when you're selecting a provider. Evaluate expertise and the scale of the operation. So, some BPO providers specialize in different industries. Maybe they only do accounting. Maybe they only do, customer service, or, So we find that a lot of our clients, they start off with 1 or 2 roles, but then they venture into other departments of their business, and they need a partner that can help them scale. And it eventually is the equivalent of them having their own business set up in the Philippines, but with all our operational excellence backing them up. And it really does help them grow. Engage in detailed discussions, have a face-to-face. There's a lot of people with a lot of expertise, especially in the Philippines these days. If you can get on the phone with someone, hopefully someone, perhaps local, that has some staff that are based in your country, and they understand your sort of unique challenges combined with the Philippines, that would be perfect. And then obviously, request a proposal and evaluate and make your decision. So just talking through quickly some of our case studies. Now, Darren Gunton, I've actually met Darren. He's a fantastic guy, runs a business called Total Tools. Many of you, if you haven't, maybe you're not a tradesman, but if you haven't been to one of their stores and you're someone that likes your power tools, I think you'd be in heaven if you went to one of Total Tools stores, and have a great e-commerce presence. And when I met Darren, he is the general manager of marketing, was obviously growing his marketing team, and has been a tremendous partner of ours in doing so. It's had a huge impact on their e-commerce sales, their website traffic, and their conversion rates. They've got a very diverse team in the Philippines. Now it doesn't just include digital marketing, but also customer service, logistics, content management, data and analysis, and also graphic design. So, very substantial team, doing really well. And having someone like Darren as a champion onshore of all of this has made partnering with him and the Total Tools company so much more successful. It's been fantastic. He's been, very proactive. And there is actually video on our website if you do want to hear an interview of him and his experience. You're more than welcome to do that. Right. So I hope that's given you a little bit to share. I wanted to go through a few questions before we end the webinar, just to see if there's anyone that's got any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and see if we can get a few questions answered. Bear with me just for 2 seconds. I'd certainly love to hear, if anyone's still on the call, certainly love to hear, what you're doing in your business, and maybe answer any specific questions that you have. All right, so we've got a couple of questions coming in. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. One of the common questions we get asked at microsourcing is around quality, and I can just see there's a question here coming in already around quality, and it's a challenging one. So the question that's been asked is, how can we ensure the quality of work when offshoring? So let me just cover that off with you. So quality of work, obviously, there's a lot of things that go into quality. The first thing is, I think, getting the right people for the role. So you don't want to be just allocated staff. You want to have a very thorough recruitment process to get the right person for the role. That's going to give you a head start in quality right out of the gate. The second thing I would say is, making sure they're paid appropriately. So invest in experience, and you can often, what works is hiring someone even a little bit of more experience than what you need, and that works in the Philippines. In Australia, if you did that, arguably they might be doing a job that's a little bit below them. They want to be progressing their career. And you might have an attrition problem if you did that. But in the Philippines, they really value the work. They're very, very loyal. It means a lot to them. And you can afford to invest in expertise even beyond, what you can afford there. So second thing, I would invest in extra expertise. Companies or partners like microsourcing will have, tracking mechanisms that will help with things like, productivity tracking, and attendance and things like that. And you can certainly use that. The other thing I would do is, look at your systems and processes. Make sure you've got good systems and processes so that your team your offshore team can really do their best. And the last thing I would say is keep the team close. So don't treat them as hold them at arm's length, I suppose. So, for example, when I set up my teams in the Philippines, I actually went over there and did a site tour and went through and met the team and, shared a meal with them. That's going to make a big difference, and it'll really boost their motivation, enthusiasm, and it'll give you some real cultural awareness that you otherwise wouldn't have. I've got a couple of other questions coming in. Is full-time offshoring better than part-time? So full-time, look, I think having full-time focus, what you do, part-time ultimately leads to you sharing staff with other companies. And if it is a short-term project and you simply don't have the workload, well, maybe that's the only option. But we find, obviously, we only do full-time dedicated. We do that because it means that the staff are exclusively dedicated to you and your team. They are an extension of your local operations, and they have full-time focus on your business goals. And it can be hard for staff to split their week across 4 or 5 different businesses, and it can lead to perhaps your business being deprioritized. So I think having that focus really matters. I would argue that you're better off spending some of the let's say you've only got 30 hours a week worth of work. I would extend yourself to 40 hours, and then all of a sudden you've got your full-time role. Yes, you're going to be reinvesting some of your cost savings into the role, but ultimately you'll have a better experience, and you can grow that team there. What about language barriers? That's a next question that's come in. I've already mentioned that English is very, very strong in the Philippines. When you work with a company like Microsourcing, you ultimately do get to interview the staff before they're chosen, and it is you that chooses the staff as well. So you would get an opportunity to talk on a video call similar to what we're doing today, and get an opportunity to interview them, and naturally you could assess whether you thought there was a language barrier. We do also do things like English exams, as I mentioned earlier. I honestly don't see language barriers being an issue in the Philippines. I do hear about it in terms of outsourcing to other countries, but in the Philippines it's not really an issue. How do businesses manage the time zone difference? So I have already covered this to some degree, but I'll just cover it again, and that is the well, if you look at Australia, we are 2 hours currently different to the Philippines. Anytime between 6 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night, 7 days a week in the Philippines is standard business hours. So you could basically ask them to start work, let's say at 7 a.m. their time. That would be the equivalent right now of 9 a.m. in Australia, and it would still be standard business hours. So yeah, the staff at Microsourcing do 9-hour shifts, 9-hour days, with 1 hour break and 2 15-minute breaks. But certainly you can align the hours perfectly with your time zone. And even, as I said, even if you had staff in the US, very common that they would get staff working at night. So really the time zone is not an issue at all in the Philippines, and certainly something that has a huge advantage for businesses to be able to leverage. What security measures and legal safeguards are there around information security in the Philippines? So, well, I mentioned very early in my presentation that we are ISO certified for information security and quality, for that matter. That certification brings our standards to a very high level. Most of the large corporates that we deal with, when they see our processes around information security, are pleasantly surprised and realize that we have very stringent standards that are very difficult to meet. We can customize those information security policies from an IT perspective to your requirements. So if you have specific requirements that are required, that can be done. But I think you would find that, right from the start, our base level standards are, very, very high. So we obviously do things to, everything from state-of-the-art firewalls and safeguards around information security on the actual computer that we're deploying to the staff, right through to, physical security in our building. So, all staff log in with an electronic key card. They can only go to the area of the building that they're allowed to attend to. There is guards on every level. It's highly secure, and that's partly because we deal with some businesses that have, they're in healthcare, or they're in, credit card processing, and some areas where information security is mission critical to their operations. So yeah, talk to us about that. But certainly, I think you'll find that one of the advantages of working with a business the size of Microsourcing would be the scale and sophistication of the information security policies. Okay, well, that's about it for all our questions today. I really thank you for attending. You will be sent a recording shortly after this. If you needed to, look at that. It will also have my details on the presentation. But if you do want to reach out to Microsourcing, please, we'd be more than happy to help. I would love to talk to you and understand more about your individual business requirements, and at the very least start to plan for the future of what an offshore team might look like, whether that be, you can start with as little as one staff member, as many of our clients do. We've obviously scaled to the point where we have clients, with more than 800 staff. So, certainly we can help with scalability over time, but it would be our absolute pleasure to be of service. So thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. And all the best with your offshoring journey. Bye for now.